Hello and welcome. Now, everybody's talking about the IMF, and I know we have touched on it before, but I think we need to revisit it. Now, I want to look at what the big deal is, what the minorities' problem is, and is there a silver lining with this seeming cloud? Is there a lot to be said? So let's just get on it and see what it is at all. I mean, is there anything Ghana is going to say or do or cannot do that the IMF have to say? Indeed, we've come out with our own homegrown policies. The basic is that we are earning less than we are spending. There are too many too many holes in the barrel, and therefore the water is leaking out. Do we go out and fetch more water into this barrel, or do we find ways in which to plug it? Indeed, do we need the IMF to plug these holes in the barrel before we move ahead? I'm a novice when it comes to finance. With me in the studio is Sydney Casely Hayford, and joining us on the phone will be Rickett Hagen, Kweku Rickett Hagen, Deputy Minister for Trade, also to shed light on this IMF thing. By the time the show is finished, we would all be educated on IMF. My name is Nanan Sakwa, and this is PM Express. Well, hello and welcome, and let me just simply say this is your IMF education. We're going to do a 1-hour crash course as to whether is it needed, is it not needed, but what I don't understand is we are in a financial crisis, and all indications mean that we are spending more than we are earning as a country. That's one. Number two, in between spending less and earning less and spending more, there's a lot of leakage, a lot of, really Saudi Arabian lifeline, lifestyle somewhere in the middle, ostentatious lifeline. And therefore, we can't meet our bills. So we're going to the IMF. And I'm just wondering what we tell Daddy IMF. Daddy IMF, here we are. We are earning 10 cedis and we're spending 50 cedis. We drive Jaguars and we drive Land Cruisers. We live in expensive houses. And so, Sydney, then the IMF says what? Well, I don't know. I mean, educate us, and then we'll come back into it. So I am Ghana. I come to you as IMF and I say, look, Sydney, I have gold, oil, diamond, fertile land, able bodies to work, I have everything, but I don't earn enough. I haven't got a good database, so I can't collect enough revenue. However, I spend good. I drive good cars. I have good offices, good accommodation, and I just need more money so I can spend more. I mean, what do we tell them, and how does it go? I mean, layman terms,
Well, thank you for having me on the program. But first of all, let's just correct one thing, should we? Accommodation is not exactly good in government offices these days, as we hear from the our Commissioner of Human Rights. She needed better accommodation to be able to house herself, and therefore her work output has been a little weak on that score. So yes, government must be providing all of these things, but they're not doing so well on the accommodation side. So yes, let's just move on. But Nana, look, you have put it very much in context, and everything you're saying is very accurate. We're not earning enough, and we are spending far more than we should be. Number one. Two, we have borrowed too much money to try and correct what we thought was going wrong, and we have not used the money for the purpose. Therefore, everything that we premised that we would generate on the back of all the borrowing that we did has not come through. So we are now reeling and wondering, well, what else are we going to do in order to be able to make this thing work? We are not exporting as much as we could. We are not competing very well with other countries around us who are actually adding value to the same product that we are. And we are the worst implementers of all our plans and strategies that we evolve. Other people come here to Ghana. They come and learn from us. They pick up what we are talking about. They come and participate in our workshops. They go back, they implement what we have done, and theirs works and is more successful. And they actually roll it out very, very well. Uganda came here, looked at our decentralization issues and how we were doing it, thought it was interesting. They went back, they added it, refined it, tightened a few things here and there, and their decentralization project has taken off and is working and is yielding them results. Rwanda came here. Kagame himself was here. He came and sat in what we were trying to do with our mobile technology and everything that we were putting in place. He went back, he implemented it practically, line by line. And Rwanda is flying with their e-transactions and everything else. So
I think there's another country that came to do the NHIs, came to...
another country came and did that. Yeah. And they also took it back. I can't remember, I think it was Tanzania or some people, but they've also implemented. But that is half our problem, really. Well, not half our problem, it is more than 80% of our problem, that we don't implement what we talk about. We make lots of noise because of this, the first independent country, the black star of Africa, the sub-Sahara guru that came up. And we tout all of that, and it's not getting anywhere. These days, I'm getting increasingly skeptical that we talk about a democracy that is homegrown and that is built in. And we keep on saying that we are doing very well in democracy. But when you look very critically at what we have done and what we are trying to achieve further with our democratic principles, we are in a situation now where we can't even fight for the removal of certain individuals who we think are in the wrong holes in government and need to be, to be straightened up. We have a mayor of Accra who's sitting in his seat comfortably.
Bruce Almighty.
Absolutely, brutalizing, journalists and
the driver just waiting for the crew.
Yeah, using using the police force like his own pocket guard. And our policemen don't seem to have the nuance and the common sense to say, listen, you can't just come and do this. You need to show me. And when we get there, we are in charge. And you know what I mean? So we are even in a situation where even as much as we are touting our democratic credentials, we're riding on the back of the fact that we came through with an election petition, and we were able to not have civil unrest, and we didn't maim and kill each other. This has become our success story for democracy, and rightly so. It is one facet of it, but there's so much more that needs to be corrected and fixed so we can actually get things done. So yes, do we need the IMF to come in and do certain things for us? Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And the reason why we do is that if you look at the recently ended IMF program that we came out of, which started in 2009 and ended in July of 2012, we were doing okay. At least we were reporting macro statistic indicators that seemed to be okay, until suddenly the IMF program ended. And then between July of 2012 and December of 2012, we had this wanton spree of overspending, virtually raped the cash coffers and spent everything that we can, borrowed some more with some kind of strategy to replace it going forward or in the new year. And none of that has happened. So we enter into 2013, and then we complained that because of an election petition, we were not able to generate enough economic activity to be able to turn things around. So we finished that activity in August of 2013. We've been going now for a year, and we still can't get it right. So much so to the point that we are actually turning to an organization to help us out in order for us to be able to get policy credibility, as we call it, and also to be able to turn the economy around. There is so much wrong with the structure of the economy and how we do it, and I think as we go further into it, we'll be able to appreciate a lot more. But do we need an IMF? We need an IMF because we are not disciplined. We don't have the self-discipline to do what we say we are going to do.
That's what I can't. That's what I can't understand. It's like going to a gym and say, I need a personal coach.
Yes.
Because he's going to push me a bit. But when it comes to national level, is it not too much of an irresponsibility? On a personal level, if I went to the gym and I said, look, I need this guy so that I can push me to do 1 hour, 20 minutes instead of my usual 30 minutes and get off the treadmill, fine, it's just me. But for a whole state of 25 million people to go to an organization and say, look, come and push us because otherwise we will spend all our money. I don't know, maybe I'm simplifying it too much and you have to help me.
I think you are simplifying it, and also you are extending the responsibility too wide. 25 million people have not gone to the IMF. The executive whom we have voted for, we appointed to run the company. Yes, they are our representatives, but they are not our representatives to the extent that we are a plebiscite and we go and we vote for what we need to be done. They don't come to us and say, okay, this is what we think should be done, 1, 2, 3 to 100. So tell us whether you agree to 1, disagree to 2, disagree to 3, and you vote for it, and whatever you say is what we go and do. You know it doesn't work that way, all right? Even our parliamentary representatives, I'm not sure how much of their constituencies they go to and seek the advice and come and do what they're supposed to do. And this is another problem.
Okay, so if we were, let's say, Rwanda after the war, if we are Ethiopia during the drought, if we are, Ivory Coast after the civil war, I accept it. But what is our excuse? We are not fighting. We still have our farmlands. It's raining. So that's how come I don't get it. I mean, what is the reason for going to IMF to say, come and push me? If we've gone through a war and, we can't stabilize, fine. If it hasn't rained for 10 years and therefore we can't do anything, then I agree. But if nothing has happened, why do you wake up one morning and say, look, I'm going to get a personal trainer? I mean, you're fit, you're a beast.
You see, Nana, we are not as good as what we say we are. Okay? We are way beyond in talk than in reality. Currently, as we sit, if you look at and let me use an example, because typical example, Scotland is going to vote
yes or no
to either stay with England or stay out of England tomorrow. Now, my credibility, if I was in that space talking about, international politics, somebody would probably asking me today, so what do you think? Will Scotland vote yes or will they vote no? Based on my analysis, if I say Scotland will vote yes, and then Scotland does vote yes, that's a notch in my credibility cap. So next time anybody's calling me, they will know that I'm coming with some ammunition. That's the basis on which you build your credibility as an analyst and as, a person who's predicting future. So our ability to do so is in the way we do our budgets and the way we forecast our revenues and our expenses. The problem we have is that there have been singular rare moments when we have actually predicted revenue streams and they have come in as predicted. Now, even that, you have to understand that the way we record our financials in this country, the way we report the consolidated accounts, and then we have to report the MMDAs and the departments and agencies and everything else and the local government, is very weak. And you only need to look at the Auditor General's report to see how weak it is. The AG consistently has written a disclaimer opinion on the financial statements of this country. And that tells you that on a professional level, they are very uncertain that the numbers that we are reporting and using as our forecast are accurate. So because you have that problem, you are not even sure that the revenues which we are projecting based on numbers which we have accumulated over the years are even accurate going forward. So as we sit today, at the halfway stage of June of 2014, the revenues are short, all right, by about 2 billion cedis. Okay, our revenues have not come in by about 2 billion. And I stand to be corrected if I'm wrong, but my figures are coming straight from the Ministry of Finance's websites. And I've also been to see the Controller and Accountant General on several occasions this past month, trying to get to the bottom of some numbers, which I can't quite figure out how they tie in. And lastly, I'm also pushing the Auditor General and saying, look, guys, it's September has come, it's ended. You should have published the audited financial statements of this country by July of this year. It's September, and you still haven't published your audited report. By the time we get it, 1 year would have lapsed, and then it becomes a meaningless exercise. It becomes just purely academic to look at that, and there's very little you can do as corrective to be able to put things forward. So we have that credibility issue with the numbers and the way they are reported, and the basis of the projections of our budget shows when at the end of every year we come back, and then the macro indicators have not been in step. The micro indicators are falling short. Our fiscal gap is growing. Our import gap is growing, and all because we have been unable to actually predict accurately enough that this is where we are going to end. And where the government goes wrong, our governments all the time, is they make a budgetary prediction, all right? And once they've made the budgetary prediction, they then start going to spend in line with the budget that they have put together. Okay? So the money doesn't come in, but they've spent it already, and they have to keep resorting to borrowing in order to be able to fill that expenditure gap. So it's like you and I in our home, where we say, okay, all right, this year I'm going to get a new job, and that new job is going to bring me another 1,000 cedis a month. So let's go and buy some new shoes and see if we can get some new tires for the car. But you haven't got the money yet. And then come the end of the month, the money doesn't show up because you didn't get that new job or you didn't get the raise. Now suddenly you have overspent and you don't have it. That's the simplest way I can put it. Okay? So there are several areas that have to be corrected in order for us to be able to get some sense of stability within the economic framework. And those areas are all written up very clearly in the government's homegrown policy documents. Okay? Government has said it, government has laid it out, and it is very, very clear what should be done. Okay? The IMF has also seen that document because government has been talking to the IMF. It's not something that happened only last month or two. They've been talking to them. Since April, the IMF has known about this, if not before. So we are in a situation where we have submitted what we say are homegrown policies, and government's mantra to the IMF all that time was, yes, we know you are there, we know we can come to you for help, but we want to do this ourselves, and this is what we are planning to do, and this is how we want to do it. So the IMF has taken a look at this and are saying, okay, fine, we understand where you're coming from, but looking at it from the outside, inside, we are also saying that there are several things that you need to be able to do quickly, and you can do a lot more, and therefore we would like to recommend that you try and do A, B, C, D, E, even though you are planning to do so, but you can intensify them. And the IMF have laid this out in their document, which is their staff report of everything that they assess and what they decided on based on the discussions with the government that they want to do. So this is all laid out, okay? But what you have to understand is that this program that the IMF recommends is not an imposition on the government of Ghana. IMF hasn't sat down and suddenly written up a whole series of things that the government should do. IMF hasn't given them a prescription of tasks and activities. The IMF has looked at what government has submitted as its homegrown policy, and the IMF is saying, yes, we think that you can get it done if you implement all of these things, but there are some things you can do in the short term very quickly, and there are some things you can do in the long term, medium to long term as well. And this is what we think you should do. All right? So this is where we are, and that's how the thing works. Okay, government itself is saying that it wants to be able to streamline its payroll and correct the ghost names on the payroll and try and keep a track and get a handle over expenditure. Government has said that to the IMF already, and I'll take it straight from the homegrown policies and the IMF's policies, and you'll see that this has been discussed. Okay, so a lot of people, particularly the TUC, are making a lot of noise that IMF is going to come in and they're going to ask us to retrench and we're going to have to lay people off and stuff like that. And if they do, we are going to be fighting them tooth and nail. This is not the IMF's decision. It's government's decision. And the IMF is going to find a way to actually craft a program that will support what government wants to do. That's how it works.
But you see, two things. I go all the way back to Nkrumah. He goes to the IMF to borrow money to build a dam. Now, that's a government who's seriously facing a huge project and is challenged. I can accept it, that if we were going to build something to that magnitude and it's going to supply a new Valco or a new, Ford motor company is going to come, and therefore we're going there, I understand. But having, even serial callers will ring and talk about ghost names. I mean, it doesn't even get that technical that we go and sit in IMF and say, well, you know what, I have about 25,000 teachers who really don't exist, yet I pay them. And the software to correct these things, I'm sure, will be done in any elementary ICT. So I still find it a challenge that in 2014, we can go to IMF and say, look, I still have ghost names in my workforce, and if you give me some money, these are some of the things I will do so that I can pay you back. I'm going to take a break, and then when we come back, the conversation continues. But I am still being educated. Stay tuned. Well, we're doing a crash course on the need to go to the IMF, and Ghana is a case study, and I am a little bit baffled. My senior brother here is educating me. Just before we went on a break, I'm saying that Kwame Nkrumah at one point went to the IMF because he had to build Akosombo Dam, and indeed the whole Akosombo township. Now that is a huge project. He needed to do that project so he could set up Valco, which was going to zap literally half the power that this dam was going to produce. So you just knew that this is a big stumbling block, so let me go to IMF so I can get it over and done with. Now I fast forward, 60 years down the line. I go back to the same office. This time I don't want to build a dam. I want money, but some of the things were, for you to give me the money is that I have ghost names and I'll get them off the system. Have I simplified it, or is not acceptable?
What our government is doing at the moment is totally unacceptable, because there are many things we can do that don't need us to go borrow money. You see, citizens' empowerment is always a fear for government. They want to talk about transparency and giving citizens the power to make decisions, yet they guard their own power jealously, because they can see that a more educated, a more informed citizen, a more powerful citizen group will certainly create a lot more problems for them going forward. So tactically, it is not something which they try and do very easily. However, you're getting to a point now in this country where the educated class is beginning to grow. Okay, as we are getting more graduates coming out of school, and the pipeline is getting up and up and up, you are eliminating that group of illiterate and semi-literate persons who have taken the trouble to sacrifice their hard-earned money to get their children educated. So even though they might not be educated, they have not propagated illiteracy. They have tried to make sure that their children have superseded them in knowledge. So we're getting a group now that is very, very conscious of demanding their rights and making sure that they get what is due to them in a fair manner as it goes forward. And you can see the evidence of this in the way social media has really been getting into the whole idea of citizen advocacy and citizen governance. Hence, you've got the Occupy Ghana thing, which we are doing, in which we are trying to use that to support.
Is tomorrow Red Friday?
No, tomorrow is not Red Friday. We're doing Red Friday once a month now.
Okay.
And we are coming out with a whole theme going forward. So periodically we will be coming out with various interventions, and our strategy is that we will by all means tell government exactly what we think can help to make the situation better. Government can take it or not, but if they refuse to take it, we're coming back at them again and again and again and again until these things are fixed by any means necessary, except violence. There's no violence involved in this. There's no partisanship. It is about good governance. But don't let me digress.
Okay.
What we're dealing with here is that a whole package of solutions which government has labeled homegrown solutions. And I always like to point out that if you go into the government websites and you're trying to look for a homegrown solution, you're not going to find it as a document. the document proposed by the Ministry of Finance is called the Economic and Financial Policies for the Medium Term. That is what government calls its homegrown policies. And in there, government goes through a whole series of issues which it believes it can implement. And once implemented, these solutions will turn the government around. And it's expansive. It goes from tax revenue, it goes from public wage sector controls, it goes into capital expenditure, it goes into the infrastructure fund. It talks about how to manage its debt. Debt sustainability is a key issue, and all of that. And it was based on most of that the Senchi Royal thing happened. Mm-hmm. The Royal Senchi National Economic Forum happened because this document was prepared in April. The Senchi Royal thing was in May. So in many ways, the discussions that were had at the National Economic Forum were part of the homegrown solutions was dovetailed into that solution. And there were recommendations also by the World Bank, even at that time, to be able to forestall some of those things. You see, if you look at it, some of the things that the World Bank is asking us to do, and I'll just take a couple of them just to illustrate so people can appreciate. It's broken up into two. There's the medium term and there's immediate short term solutions that the World Bank has said. Now, the IMF has said. Now, bear in mind that government has already submitted to the IMF their own program. So the IMF is adding to that program and saying, yes, we agree with your program, but why don't you consider this as well? Simple one on the revenue side. Why don't you increase selective tax rates using it by doing ad valorem rather than a fixed rate? Ad valorem means that it will fix a percentage so that the more you spend, the more the taxes that government can get at the end of the day. In so many ways, this balances the equation, because if every one of us is paying 15%, if I buy a tin of tomatoes and I'm charged 15% tax on it, let's say the tomatoes are worth 10 cedis and I get 15%, government gets, 1 CD 50 pesos out of that on the VAT. You pay that, I pay that, the fitter down the street also pays that same amount of money.
Yeah.
But if you do it ad valorem, then those who earn more will necessarily pay more because they'll be buying more. And so this kind of fixes it. And IMF is saying, why don't you consider doing this? And government has accepted that they will do this, that they will try and move to ad valorem.
Including income tax?
Income tax is there. The income tax won't change.
But would they add valorem to income tax?
No, they won't. This is particularly on VAT and other indirect expenses.
Okay.
Right. It doesn't apply to income tax. There will be higher excises on specific items so that we will selectively tax incoming products a lot more. And there's no selected list yet. So there's no point in me trying to guess what list that is. The other thing the IMF is saying is that you need higher tax rates on real estate, along with stepping up registration and valuation efforts. And this is particularly at the district levels, okay, where you have a whole host of houses sitting there. The valuation of those houses are very, very low, and therefore the amount of revenues coming into the districts are not adequate. And nobody can disagree with this, all right? It's saying that if your house is worth 1.5 million cedis, you've got to pay your taxes accordingly. So the valuations have to be corrected. And it's the valuations which are incorrect, which is what caused the problem. I had somebody come to my home, came to come and do my evaluation of my property. When he finished and he showed me the document, I said, is this what my property is worth at current rates? I said, I didn't hear. All I'm saying is that come and do the valuation properly and give me the things so I can pay. So we ended up going by, and he couldn't understand. He thought I was crazy that he's giving me a break on my taxes, on my rates, and I'm complaining. And I said, no, if you're doing that to my property, there are other people around whose properties are 3-4 times more valuable than mine. So if you're doing it to me and you're going to do it to them as well, then the whole revenue from the whole municipality comes down. So it's not right. And then he has the audacity afterwards to ask me to pay. So I said, okay, hold on, me go in my checkbook. I said, what's a checkbook? He said, you must be crazy. Munji checkbook, say munji check. I said, I must check. I said, municipality pa munji check. I said, get off with you. I either give you a check or I come and pay directly at the municipality myself. So he left. He didn't collect the money because he wanted the cash.
I mean, last week, one of the reasons why I was upset with the mayor was, and I used a typical example, and this is the truth, a house in airport. UT Bank values the house at $1.5 million. The following day, AMA comes and values the same house at 34,000 Ghana cedis. The house in question is rented for $8,000, and AMA is happy to walk away with 195 cedis. You say you're constantly chasing granite sellers and abaye. This is, hanging fruits for you. The house is rented for $8,000, and you're happy to walk away with 195 cedis.
Stupid.
So I was mad at the mayor, dragging the president into a gutter. These are the things you have to do to raise money. So if IMF is raising it, it's in the right direction.
Absolutely. And so you see, it's there, and these are some of the short-term measures. And then a couple of others is there should be an immediate freeze on new tax exemptions. Now, tax exemptions are corruption conduits in this our country. Most of it comes from the president's office, from the presidency, and they give people tax exemptions as favors in order for them to be able to get things done. Whether their personal pockets are lined up or not, I'm not going to say because I don't know. But it has become a big issue, all right, and we are very much aware of it. And the IMF is saying, why don't you do something about that now? Just no more tax exemptions, freeze it completely for now. Doesn't matter who. And let's see how that works out and how much revenue that generates. So that's one. Then the other thing they are saying is that there should be better identification and targeting of large taxpayers. The GRA is now broken down into your small taxpayers, medium taxpayers, and large taxpayers. And there's a huge loop in the large taxpayer side. A lot of people who earn a lot of money take their money in foreign currency and they dump it abroad. It's never declared here. And a lot of persons also do not really declare their income taxes in this country. And there's a need to strengthen that part of it. So that's part of their recommendations. So you see, it's not all about, coming in with harsh recommendations. They are also making concrete suggestions of how to get certain things fixed in the medium term. Now, the big one that is here, which I really want us to talk about because it's actually written in their documents. This is an IMF document. It's the IMF document for the 2014 Article 4 Consultation Staff Report. Okay, it's a press release, and you can find this anytime on the IMF's website. It's there. It's a document that is public, so you can download it, you can read it. But one of the things that they have to short-term for expenditure is a reduction in wage costs through streamlining of allowances starting at higher income levels. Okay? Now, you can't disagree with that. See, you can't disagree with that. So it's a refinement to government's own measures of trying to fix the wages issue. And I'll just show you what government itself is saying on the wages matter so that it doesn't look like as if I'm reading only one side. Bear with me, I'll pull that up for you now. Okay, this is what government is saying on the public sector reform and payroll management. It's paragraph number 74 of the homegrown policies. And it says, government has been confronted with challenges in the past, blah, 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 blah. The single pay paying policy was announced in 2008 and came into force. To give us some background, the size of the wage bill has been a major concern to government. In the 2012 budget, government had to finance the arrears that had accumulated since the introduction of the single spine pay policy. The huge wage bill necessitated some remedial actions from government, which included the biometric registration as an intervention to clean the payroll and reduce the wage bill. Other measures being implemented contain the rising wage bill are payroll management, which is being done by the Accountant General's Department to bring in a whole new system that government needs to use and to implement. Decentralization of the payroll, taking it down to the districts and the municipalities so that they are more in control of their wage bill. And government is saying what we want to do is to ask them to tell us every month exactly how many people they have on payroll, and then we'll release the money for that payment to be made so we have some kind of control. I don't agree with it because if you're going to decentralize, decentralize. Don't decentralize and still retain control. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So they need to figure out a way of how they can get that done. 3, we are bringing in what they call the electronic salary payment vouchers, which government has already announced that it has started doing. And these ESPVs are supposed to be a means of controlling the ghost names on the government's payroll. And then they want to do a payroll audit. They want to then take subvented agencies off the government payroll. And there are several other little things that they want to do in that regard. But this is what government's homegrown payroll, homegrown policies are saying. And that's why the IMF is saying that we agree with you on that one, but here's something else that you can look at.
I see.
Consider implementing this. Then the next one is non-replacement of departing public sector employees in overstaffed areas. You see, whenever we talk about this in the media, we only talk about, non-replacement of departing staff. But it's not only that. It's in overstaffed areas.
But aren't almost all the areas overstaffed? I'm going to take a break and come back. Almost any institute, 40,000 drivers, the GES, and the list goes on where, most institutions have 1 or 2 men more than necessary. Probably not in a particular department, but then overall, there may be a lot. So how do we then, if there's more drivers but no electrician, what do? Do you lose some of the drivers and then replace them by electricians, or send the drivers to train to become electricians? How do we adjust that? Stay tuned. IMF Education 101, if you ask me. But just before we went on the break, some of the suggestions that, government is proposing, IMF is proposing, is not to replace workers where, so if multimedia needs 500 staff and there's 602 leaves, don't replace the 2. However, we could have more drivers than cameramen. And so then if you lose 2 drivers, what do? If you lose 2 cameramen, do you replace them even because you have 5 more drivers than necessary? How do we do that? The other thing which I find amazing is this tax exemption. Because we aren't honest people and we've used tax exemptions for our friends and family. Now, if an NGO comes and says, well, I'm going up north because there's river blindness, so there's my big machine to go and help them with river blindness, well, you have to pay tax on it. I'm going to send my thing back because, the machine costs a lot of money. I'm coming to do it free of charge, and I just want to bring it in to go and help you. But then you're saying that, no, pay tax on it. That's a tricky one.
Yes, it's not a tricky one. It's a stupid one. You see, you don't just slap taxes on anything because you are desperate for revenue. You have to think about the long-term impact. Because with these things, you do it to one person, the word goes around. And then anybody who is even contemplating it and hasn't started just puts it on the back burner and just doesn't come in. But these NGOs and these foundations and the non-profit organizations, they really help in many ways to be able to save you the infrastructure, and particularly in the sensitive areas where you're trying to make inroads with some of the Millennium Development Goals, for example. Now, I'm not a big fan of freebies. I don't agree with a lot of the interventions by NGOs, especially where it interferes with trade. If anybody comes in and says, well, we are coming here to come and grow soya beans, and we're going to do it for free, then when we finished, we will give it to these people just to recover our costs. I say, no, go away, please. I'm not interested in that. Because there are persons who can grow soya beans and make money out of it and make a living out of it. It creates employment, it creates some tax revenue, it gets us some dignity, and it enables us to be able to develop some kind of scientific way of improving our seeds. So I have a lot of issues with people who try and do that. However, they do serve a purpose. And ours is to identify that purpose and approve for purpose, rather than just approving anything willy-nilly. But as we are talking about it, some of the couple of other things that the IMF brought in, I was giving examples of some of the expenditure items that it surely could do in the short term. But one of the other things also is that they are recommending that we should reduce or eliminate transfers to the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation, to GNPC. Right now, GNPC has a carried interest in the Jubilee Field of 10%. They get about $36 million or something every month. Nobody knows what they do with the money. Okay, they are supposed to publish annual returns, which we can go and find. I understand that they send copies to the Oil and Gas Committee in Parliament, but it should be available. I mean, this is part of our Freedom of Information Act, which doesn't need money to be acted upon. We've been postponing it every year for God knows how many years now. The NPP government didn't enact it. The NDC government is not enacting it. Now the latest I hear from the minority leader in Parliament, Alban Bagbin, is that they were going to table it before in the next session in Parliament by December. We heard that last year and 2 years ago. So there's no reason why you should think it would happen. But if we do have a Freedom of Information Act in place, it certainly will enable us to get access to a lot more information, be a better informed society, so we can move forward. What I can't understand about our politicians, okay, is that why can't you take pride in saying to anybody that, yes, when we came to power, we made Ghana a far more educated, more sophisticated, more understanding, more analytical society. Because that is the accolade you want. You want to be able to say that I have lifted the spirits of these people and made them a better class of person before I left. That for me would be an achievement. Mm-hmm. But anyway, that's politics. I'm not a politician, so I don't really understand it. But the one thing that we were talking about is this, that the IMF also recommend, apart from what government is saying, that why don't you put in a specific program to reduce the public workforce while improving its skills mix. All right? So again, a lot of the time the media just truncates that and just talks about reducing the public workforce. But you want to also change the skills mix. And hence this rhetoric that we have now, that there are 40,000 drivers in the Ghana Education Service. Do we need to have 40,000 drivers? Maybe we don't, because the way it goes, nearly every person who is in authority in any ministry has one driver for themselves personally and has one driver for office. All of this just doubles our expenses, and we need to rationalize most of these things. But I'm at pain to emphasize that the IMF is not asking us to just go and sack everybody. Mm-hmm. There are rational things for us to consider in order to be able to get these things done. So, rolling back to where we started, the government has put in its recommended program, which is considering its house-grown policies. IMF is saying, good, here are some additional things that we suggest that you could look at